Hi, I'm Charlotte Allen, founder and CEO of Rebel Success for Leaders. We work with executives and VPs responsible for R&D, engineering, and innovation at food and beverage companies. The topics we share on this channel are critical to change leadership success in any organization. Today, we're talking about when transformations lose steam or fail during a handoff between leaders. So you've handed off your transformation, you staffed it, you funded it, you declared it launched, and then you moved on because that's what executives do. On to the next initiative. 6 months later, though, something is wrong. The team is still in motion, the reports are still green, but the transformation has quietly stopped mattering. Here's the question no one asks in the debrief. What happened between the handoff and the stall? The executive did everything right. They sponsored the initiative, they secured the funding, they staffed the team and stood behind the launch. Then they moved on to the next priority level, which is exactly what executives are expected to do. However, 56% of transformations lose active C-suite sponsorship within 6 months after launch. When the executive who authorized the transformation moves on, something specific happens. The informal credibility that surrounded the initiative, that coalition of belief, the interpretive context, what the organization views as a priority based on who is behind it, does not transfer with the person who replaces them from the org chart. The org chart reassignment does not transfer. The organization recalibrates around whoever holds authority next. And that person rarely has the same standing to hold the thread that was initially established. And the organizational machine begins its work before the executive knows that it started. It shifts to a new norm. Rejection is not the organizational response, though. The organization absorbs what happens, and absorption is much quieter than rejection, and it's far harder to see, much less reverse. Bain and Company analyzed more than 24,000 transformations and found that large-scale change efforts capture 24% of their planned value when a dedicated senior steward holds the thread through implementation. Most organizations read that as a staffing recommendation. However, it's a description of what the organization does when no one withstanding stays accountable for the outcome. Separate Bain research puts implementation value loss at 10 to 14% under stable conditions. That's the floor, the basics. When the executive who carried the initiative's meaning steps away without a genuine transfer, the conditions for loss are much higher. 3 conditions determine when a transformation outlasts the handoff, when it can survive this transition at the top. The first is whether change leadership capability exists in the layer below the authorizing executive. The capacity to hold ambiguity and sustain momentum when the original context is no longer there. In most food and beverage technical leadership teams, this has not been built deliberately. When the executive moves on, that gap becomes a structural challenge. The second is whether anyone is tracking the behavior change. Milestone completion tells you the transformation was installed. Behavior change tells you it took hold. Most organizations are only measuring the first. And then the third point is whether the executive has calibrated for what the organization does naturally under new ownership. Rational people route around an initiative that has lost its center of gravity. We all move, we accommodate, we figure out how to, get things done, but silently reprioritize. They wait to see where the authority settles. By the time it shows up in the data, the renegotiation has already been underway 4 months. This is our infographic that captures the main points of this particular YouTube video. It will also be available to you in the show notes. The handoff is a value creation moment. Leaders should see what's happening, not the failure, but the absorption. They need to name it. Identify whether what you're witnessing is a quiet override, a behavior change gap, or a stewardship vacuum. Put language on the signal that you're observing. And then own it. The transformation survival belongs to the conditions that the original executive built. That accountability does not transfer with the new transfer on the org chart. And I want to make sure everyone's clear. The executive is not the bad actor in the story. They're doing precisely what they're rewarded to do. Demonstrating range, moving to the next challenge, trusting the organization to carry out what they started. The problem is the trust is placed in a machine that is not designed to carry transformations forward on its own. That piece of the understanding hasn't been accounted for. The handoff is the moment when the executive finds out whether the transformation was ever going to survive without them. You can read the full analysis on our blog. The handoff is where the inertia wins at the website. You can subscribe to World's Top STEM Leaders LinkedIn newsletter. There was a newsletter article on the topic. And you can also sign up to get notifications for our executive forum. The transformation does not belong to the initiative. It belongs to the conditions that the authorizing leader had before they moved on. So if you'd like to join our virtual conversations, we uncover real world challenges and share insights with leaders on challenges and strategies for implementing and operationalizing critical initiatives successfully. They're designed for executives and VPs with responsibilities for innovation engineering, IT, and R&D. So if you want to sign up to get on the distribution list, the link is in the notes. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next time.